Good morning. It's so very nice to be here. My name is Reverend Tamara, and I am so excited about being here because it's so difficult this morning. So I can't wait to see what happens. This morning, I invite you to place an intention in your heart right now. An intention I like to start with each sermon because it is in our hearts and minds that we determine what we're going to value and what we're going to receive. So this morning, whether it be through, that song that Beth just sang that brought me to tears, the message, the music, or something that comes to you during this time, set an intention. Is it bliss? Is it peace? Is it healing? Whatever the quality of God is that you want to experience this morning, let us sit for 10, 20 seconds and affirm that that is yours today. Shall we? Yeah. Here we go. Thank you, and let's take a big, deep breath together. One, inhale, exhale. Two more. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, and release. Our theme this month is good, great, and grand. So those words are used pretty much throughout our English language. However, I decided to get a short version from Webster's Dictionary. And the word good, one of the definitions is positive qualities. And I know we could find positive qualities within ourselves and the universe. The word great in the Webster Dictionary is beyond ordinary and exceptional. Grand, the Webster's Dictionary is magnificent and majestic. Now, I want to read my quotes, and as I read my quotes, then I'll go into my week-long path of spirituality this week. So I'm going to talk about the middle way to find our good, great, and grand feat in this world, because as spiritual warriors, I guarantee you that in the next several months, you're going to be asked to climb that mountain. Be prepared to climb that mountain with your spiritual tools, because that is the work and purpose that we're here for today, is to find and give a voice to the good of God, the good of life, and to remember that there's room for it all. So, here is what Buddha says about the middle way. The middle way is a path that transcends duality, confronting life's challenges, identifying root causes, seeking resolutions, living in a society constantly questioning one's own actions. So it puts the responsibility back on us. And Ernest Holmes says, I am guided by the same intelligence and inspired by the same imagination which scatters the moonbeams across the waves. So, do you guys remember a story? And I'm sure you do, because it's a simple story, and it's a story that speaks to our philosophy. And that story is about the young 12-year-old Indian boy that gets a drum for his 12th birthday. How many people have heard that one? No? So, this young boy gets a drum for his birthday, and he is so excited because nobody else has a drum in the tribe. So he is just so happy, and he's learning how to play his drum. And one of his friends comes up to him and says, "Can I play on the drum?" He's like, This is my drum. He shouldn't have to play with it. It's my drum. And anger rose in the young boy, and he got really upset, and he lost his friendship. So he went to his grandfather and said, I don't understand why my friend doesn't want to play with me anymore. It was my drum, and I don't understand. And he goes, well, this is what starts wars and family arguments. He said, what you must do is you must realize what's most important. And he goes, what do you mean what's most important? That's my drum. And again, it's trying to tell a story between the material world and the immaterial world, the world of spirit, the world of emotions, the world of sense, of feelings, the things we talk about, love. And also, on the opposite, when we rise in anger, when we rise in hatred, when we rise in selfishness and what that produces within us. So, the grandfather said, well, you've created a war within yourself. What do you choose? How do you feel right now? He goes, I feel really bad. And he said, so what do you think would make you feel good? And he goes, I suppose I would feel good if I shared my drum so he would find the joy in playing with it too. And the grandfather said, yes, that's a good place. And the boy said, but grandfather, how do I know which way to go or how I'm going to be in the world? How can I not pick anger over kindness? And he said, it's always about the seed that's within you. What do you water? Do you water the seed of anger or do you water the seed of compassion? And the boy said, oh. And then he goes, well, tell me more. And he said, okay. He said, it's always the one you feed. And the boy looked at him and said, what do you mean? He said, if you constantly feed your anger, you will produce more. If you feed your heart of compassion, you will receive more. And I think that seems very simple, but so very true. I noticed this morning that Kuan Yin is lit up behind me, which is the symbol of compassion, holding all the world's tears and suffering within her heart to make it whole. She's considered the goddess of compassion. So with that, I want to share with you my week. It's always so perfect when you commit to something. Like self-care, I went outside and fell down. So, I mean, it's like, it's all good. I always tell Elijah, could you be a little kinder on the themes here? You know, right, rough. So, but this morning someone goes, how are you? I said, good. I couldn't say great or grand at that moment, but I could say good, because I was struggling with some things. So how do we go from good to great to grand? It is an inner journey for sure. So I am standing here admitting that I have some prejudices about the way some people think in the world. And I am very righteous about anti-war, hatred, many things. And I had to look at how easy it is to stand before my beloveds who think like I do. You know, not in everything, but in spirituality, in the openness, in our vision, mission, and purpose statements. There's nothing more fabulous than to sit at a table with people who agree with you. It's wonderful. You feel so validated and belonging and everything that we crave in this life. And I was looking out in the world today and looking at the past, and I thought, the problem is we get scared. We get scared, we get frightened. We don't want to admit to that, but we do. And therefore, we have to feel like we have to defend things. And sometimes it surely looks like we do, especially in war and hatred. The problem is that war is within us. And even though it may not seem like we have that power and that potential, we speak of the immaterial world as being the most powerful thing, and we call that spirit. We call that the human soul. We call the ideology of, first you must think positive to feel positive. So we always talk about our responsibility in our thinking. The problem is many times when we're in fear, false evidence appearing real, we or some other person we care about draws a line in the sand and says, you are either for me or you are against me. There is no middle way. Absolutely not. You are not advocating, you are not standing tall, you are not being the person you are. If you don't agree with me, you are against me. And that is duality thinking. Ernest Holmes talks about we stand for non-duality thinking. That is a huge order on our ego. It's big. How many people love people who absolutely don't think anything like you? Is that just a little bit of a challenge sometimes? I'm making a joke. It's tough, right? It's tough. Part of that is because we haven't found the middle way within our soul, personally. That's what I think. Buddha also talks about if you have a guitar, which our musicians would smile at me, if the strings of the guitar are too loose, you can't play. If they're too tight, if the strings on the guitar are too tight, they break. You must find balance. And balance can be difficult. Because balance means you need to transcend your thinking mind to a spiritual one. You must hold fast that your purpose, that your intention is for peace. Your intention is not to be right. Your intention is for harmony. Your intention is to be able to listen to the pain of someone who can't hear you. So I got an opportunity this week. Lots of them, actually, but two very important ones. I went to my foster son's biological sister's wedding, and it was in Ridgecrest, California. And those of you who don't know where Ridgecrest is, it's about 2 hours northeast of Bakersfield. It's on the border of the Mojave Desert and the Death Valley. So the cactus end at Mojave, and nothing begins at Death Valley. Just saying. So anyway, we went, and it was literally in the middle of nowhere. And now we're in the middle of the desert. And his beloved biological dad and stepmom are Assemblies of God ministers. And so I was like, okay, I am prepared. Peace and love and happiness. Because there are things I don't agree with. For instance, they do not believe that women have the right to preach the word of God. It should only be preached by men. And of course, that hits like a lot of places for me. As you could well see. I take that personally, right? But I went and I worked really hard in meditating and doing my stuff. And I went and I sat for about 2 hours talking to his dad, and I had the most beautiful conversation about him being a minister. Now, I didn't say much about myself, which again is really hard when you got to shut up, He was like, mine doesn't count right now. But I learned a lot, and it was very graceful. I went to the Assemblies of God Church in Ridgecrest, California, And I was bracing myself to people falling on the ground and speaking in tongues and everything. A little disappointed, none of that happened, but I get to see that. But I went, and I was pretty impressed with, how large the congregation was, and, all the young people, and the music was beautiful, and the message didn't have fire and brimstone like I had expected. It had a dash, but it was pretty good. And I started looking at this community. I always thought my foster son's dad worked at Edwards Air Force Base in Mojave, but he actually spent 30 years working at China Lake, which I didn't know was in the middle of the town. So there's 30,000 people in this town, about 2 grocery stores and a Walmart and a handful of restaurants. But Kern County is so poor that most of the streets aren't paved. So if you can imagine, it reminded me a little bit of a third world country because, and I apologize to Ridgecrest people, but the dirt roads were endless. Not very many trees, not the palm trees you see in Palm Desert with the misters as you walk down the sidewalk, not many swimming pools. I went to the community college. That was a really nice place. But I started realizing China Lake. It is where the town was created during Oppenheimer's time. And as today, as I stand here, it is the center of our nuclear weapons, both testing them and creating them. And that's why there's 30,000 people in the middle of sand, because there's work, there's military work. And I was like, wow, I'm sure glad I'm not doing it. But I had to hold that in this really different place, that as I sat in their home, that just 2 miles away, there's creation of nuclear weapons of mass destruction being created as I sat there. So that was daunting for me. And of course, politics came in, and I was quiet. And I sat and I listened. And it wasn't as hard as I thought, maybe 1 or 2 moments. But I got through there and I said, hey, I climbed the mountain. I learned something, and I started looking for things that united me. The things that unite us. That is our job. Not to define the things that do not unite us, but to find those things that do. Because when you can find the things that unite us, then you could have common ground for a conversation. Right? So I realized that there isn't a whole lot going on there for the youth. Out of 30,000 people and only 3 grocery stores, there was 14 mega churches. 14 mega Christian churches. I was like, wow. Not a New Thought, nah. Not a Jewish synagogue, nah. Not a mosque, but 14, very, very, 4 times the size of us, the buildings. And then I started listening because there is, you can't go play baseball in the middle of the day at 114 degrees. So the churches provide all the socialization for the community. The elder care, the youth, the schools. And so there was the Assemblies of God was about 200 people at the 9 o'clock service. It was packed. As soon as that service was over, poof, they were all gone. And then the 11 o'clock service came. And I looked at the Catholic Church was huge. The Calvary Church was huge. Southern Baptist Church. These buildings were the hugest buildings in the whole town because that's where community life was lived. And I thought, that part's kind of cool. 14 mega churches in a town of 28,000 something. That's pretty awesome. And everybody's involved. God forbid you're not a Christian, though. You might have a more difficult time. But I saw the good, and that was like such a win. I felt so proud of myself. Yeah, right. So I go back home. And I'm feeling, I'm good. And then I got a call from my brother in Brazil. I grew up in a family that my father, during the Reagan times, went from being a Democrat to a Republican, and my mother stayed a Democrat. So at our wonderful dinners, we would always have inductive and deductive debates about policy and politics. And it was always important that we listen to the other side. So out of my siblings, my brother in Brazil is Republican. So we start talking, and he starts ranting. And I say, I am going to use the middle way. I am going to use the middle way. I'm going to actively listen. I'm going to climb that mountain. And I triggered that guy so badly that I think I never talked politics as far as my views. I was trying to find the middle way. And I said, we both have our master's degree. It's inductive, deductive logic. Instead of talking about whose guy is worse that we like, why don't we talk about what's wrong and how we think we could fix it? Let's have a conversation like that. And I'm 66 years old. I don't think my brother's ever called me a bad name because he's like almost 10 years older. He called me some very mean words. And I was like in total shock. And I still held my own. I didn't raise my voice. And I just held my own. And I lost big time to his rhetoric. But something happened inside me. And I hope I can relay this because it was magical. If you viewed the conversation as a battle, my brother won the battle, but I won the war. Because within myself, I realized how judgmental, how I wasn't as authentic as I could have been, but more importantly, I won the war because the war is within me. The war is in me. And that is the only place of power. That is the only place to change. It's within our own minds and our hearts. And then I said, well, I tried to climb the mountain, but I have a broken ankle, so you got to so give me a break. No pun intended, right? I know. Don't give me any more breaks. I don't want any more. But the point being is this, as I round this up, that we are here with a mission and purpose statement for a world that works for everyone. In our hearts and our minds, we must make room for everyone. Not the hatred, but we must make room to listen to their pain and suffering like Kuan Yin does. They're afraid. They're afraid for whatever reason that this world is giving them. I have to look at my own fear because I have that too. How do I rise above the fear and go into the spirituality, that immaterial life of feeling, of sense, of intuition, of instinct, knowing that I am one and that everything in this world, to the blade of grass, the animal, to the left, to the right, up and down, we're all one. What is my actions? How do I stand? How could I bring authenticity and active listening to hear their pain and sit at a table and be able to discuss that? That is my challenge. That is working, as Buddha says, to constantly, every day, to sit back at the end of the day and say, did I do my best? What could I have done different? How could I heal this hurt inside me so that I can stand tomorrow and love my brothers and sisters who don't think like me? And that is part of being human. That is part of being a spiritual warrior, is to find room for all. Thank you.